The fluorescent lights of the Walgreens on Fifth Avenue hummed their usual tired song as Margaret Hayes restocked the cosmetics aisle for the third time that evening. Her reflection caught in the glass display case. Sharp cheekbones, striking gray eyes, silver hair pulled back in a neat bun. At 53, she still turned heads, though she'd stopped noticing years ago. Her phone buzzed. Another text from her daughter, Emily. "Mom, did you see Vogue's new campaign? They're using women over 50 now. You should try again." Margaret's jaw tightened. She deleted the message without responding, just like she'd done with the previous 12. That dream had died 28 years ago in a Manhattan modeling agency, killed by 3 words from a chain-smoking agent named Veronica Blackwell. "You're too old." She'd been 25 then. 25 and told she'd missed her window. The industry wanted 17-year-olds. 18 max. Margaret had spent her early 20s caring for her dying mother in rural Ohio, watching her chance slip away with each bedside vigil. By the time she made it to New York, her moment had supposedly passed. Now here she was, nearly 3 decades later, folding her dreams into a blue Walgreens vest and scanning discount lipsticks for women who still believed in transformation. The automatic doors whooshed open. Margaret glanced up out of habit, then froze. The woman entering was impossibly elegant. 6 feet tall in heels, wrapped in a camel cashmere coat that probably cost more than Margaret's monthly rent. Her dark hair was styled in a sleek bob, and she moved with the kind of confidence that comes from never being told no. She was flanked by 2 assistants, both frantically typing on tablets. Margaret recognized her instantly. Dominique Chen, owner and creative director of Maison Lumière, one of the fastest-rising fashion houses in New York. She'd been featured in WWD just last week, talking about her vision for inclusive fashion. What was she doing in a Walgreens at 9 p.m. on a Tuesday? Dominique stopped at the pharmacy counter, her voice sharp with frustration. "The pharmacist is gone for the night. We close the prescription counter at 8, the clerk explained apologetically. Without her migraine medication, Dominique looked ready to collapse. Her assistants scrambled, making calls, but every pharmacy within 10 blocks was closed. Margaret watched the scene unfold, something stirring in her chest. She walked over, her sensible shoes squeaking slightly on the linoleum. "Excuse me, I don't mean to intrude, but I have extra-strength Excedrin in my locker. It's not prescription, but it helps with my migraines. You're welcome to it." Dominique turned, her pained eyes meeting Margaret's. For a moment, the fashion maven's carefully constructed armor cracked. She nodded, too desperate to refuse charity from a Walgreens employee. In the break room, Margaret handed her the pills and a bottle of water. Dominique took them gratefully, then paused, really looking at Margaret for the first time. "Your bone structure is remarkable. Have you ever modeled?" The question hit like a physical blow. Margaret's hand trembled slightly as she tucked a strand of silver hair behind her ear. "I tried. Long time ago. I was told I was too old at 25. Dominique's eyes narrowed. "Too old at 25. Let me guess. Veronica Blackwell?" Margaret's surprise must have shown on her face because Dominique laughed bitterly. "She told me the same thing. Said Asian faces didn't sell luxury. That was 30 years ago. I was 19 and fresh off the plane from Hong Kong. So instead of modeling, I decided I'd rather own the damn runway." Something shifted in the air between them. 2 women, separated by wealth and success, united by the same crushing rejection. "What's your name?" "Margaret Hayes." "Well, Margaret Hayes, do you work every Tuesday night?" Margaret nodded slowly, unsure where this was going. "Not anymore." Dominique pulled a business card from her coat pocket. "Be at this address Friday at 2 p.m. And don't wear that vest." The card was heavy stock, embossed with gold lettering. Maison Lumière, a Soho address that Margaret knew was blocks from where all the real fashion houses operated. "I don't understand." "You will." Dominique stood, her migraine already fading. The assistants snapped to attention. "Oh, and Margaret? Bring your fire. You're going to need it." They left in a whirlwind of cashmere and purpose, leaving Margaret standing in the harsh break room light, holding a business card that felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Her phone buzzed again. "Emily." "Mom, seriously. You're beautiful. Age is just a number now. For the first time in 28 years, Margaret let herself wonder if her daughter might be right. Friday arrived like a storm Margaret hadn't prepared for. She stood outside the Maison Lumière building in Soho, her best blazer suddenly feeling cheap against the backdrop of glass and steel. Young women floated in and out of the entrance, all legs and confidence, none older than 30. Inside, the receptionist barely glanced up. Name? Margaret Hayes. I have an appointment with Dominique Chun. The receptionist's perfectly microbladed eyebrows rose slightly. She made a call, then pointed toward the elevator. 15th floor. The studio was chaos wrapped in elegance. Racks of clothing lined the walls, photographers barked orders, and impossibly thin models glided across the space like swans. Margaret felt every one of her 53 years settle into her bones. Ah, you came. Dominique emerged from behind a white curtain, wearing black from head to toe. Come. She led Margaret to a smaller room where 3 people sat behind a long table. Margaret recognized one of them from fashion magazines, Lucas Bennett, a notoriously harsh photographer known for making models cry. This is Margaret. Dominique's introduction was simple, offering no context. Lucas looked up from his phone, his expression shifting from bored to incredulous. You're joking. I never joke about my collections. Dominique's voice had edges. Dominique, darling. Lucas stood, his tall frame looming. How old are you, sweetheart? 53. Margaret lifted her chin, refusing to shrink. The room erupted in whispers. The other 2 panelists exchanged glances. Lucas laughed, a cruel sound that echoed off the white walls. This is your big inclusive moment? A grandmother? He walked around Margaret like she was livestock at auction. Her skin has sun damage. Those hands have seen real work. And that hair, silver might be trendy on Instagram filters, but on a runway? Darling, your buyers will revolt. She has more presence in her silence than most models have in their entire career. Dominique's voice was ice. Presence doesn't sell $8,000 gowns to women who want to look young. Lucas stepped closer to Margaret, his cologne overwhelming. No offense, but you should be shopping at Chico's, not walking for Lumiere. This diversity stunt is going to tank your brand. Margaret felt heat crawl up her neck. The same humiliation from 28 years ago flooded back, except now it was worse because she'd let herself hope. She'd actually believed that maybe, just maybe, things had changed. I appreciate your time, Miss Chun. Margaret's voice was steady despite the tremor in her hands. But Mr. Bennett is right. I don't belong here. She turned toward the door, each step feeling like walking through cement. Margaret, stop. Dominique's command froze her mid-stride. Lucas, you're fired. Pack your equipment and get out of my building. The silence that followed was deafening. You just cost yourself the biggest campaign of the year because you couldn't see past your outdated prejudices. Dominique walked to Margaret, placed a hand on her shoulder. Now, let's talk about what happens when you stop letting small men define your worth. The room remained frozen as Lucas gathered his camera equipment, his face red with rage. He slammed the door on his way out, the sound reverberating through the studio like a gunshot. Margaret stood paralyzed, processing what had just happened. Dominique had just fired one of the most influential photographers in New York. For her, a Walgreens employee who hadn't set foot on a runway in her entire life. Sit down, Margaret. Dominique gestured to the chair Lucas had vacated. The other 2 panelists, a stylist named Rebecca and a marketing director named James, watched with barely concealed fascination. I don't understand what you want from me. Margaret's voice cracked slightly. I want you to stop apologizing for existing. Dominique pulled up a chair directly across from her. 28 years ago, someone told you that you missed your moment. They lied. Your moment is right now. Rebecca leaned forward, her dark eyes studying Margaret with renewed interest. The bone structure is incredible. High cheekbones, strong jawline, those eyes. She's editorial gold. Our spring collection is called Renaissance. James tapped his tablet, pulling up mood boards filled with images of powerful older women throughout history. We're targeting women aged 45 to 65 with disposable income. Women who are tired of being invisible. Margaret, you're not just a model for this campaign. You're the message. Margaret looked at the images on the screen. Strong women, silver-haired women, women who looked like they'd lived entire lives and emerged unbroken. I work at Walgreens. I haven't walked a runway. I don't know the first thing about. Good. Dominique cut her off. I don't want someone who knows the industry. I want someone who knows what it feels like to be dismissed, to be told your time has passed. That anger you're carrying, that fire I saw in your eyes when Lucas spoke to you, that's what I need on my runway. The weight of it settled over Margaret. This wasn't just about pretty clothes. This was about standing in front of everyone who'd ever said no and proving them wrong. But what if I fail? What if he was right and I tank your brand? Then we fail together. Dominique smiled, something fierce and genuine. But I don't think we will. I think you're going to walk that runway and remind every woman watching that their story doesn't end when society says it does. Margaret felt tears prick her eyes but refused to let them fall. If you're watching this and you've ever been told you're too old, too late, or too anything, subscribe to this channel. Because what happens next is going to prove them all wrong. Margaret's story is just beginning, and trust me, the transformation is going to be worth every second. So, Margaret Hayes, Dominique extended her hand. Ready to own the fashion world? Margaret looked at that outstretched hand, then at her own calloused fingers. She thought of every late shift, every deleted text from Emily, every dream she'd folded away. She reached out and shook firmly. When do we start? Monday. And Margaret? Bring comfortable shoes. Training is going to be hell. The next 6 weeks were brutal. Margaret arrived at the studio every morning at 6, her Walgreens shifts now reduced to weekends. Dominique had hired Marina Volkov, a former Russian runway coach known for breaking models down to rebuild them stronger. Again, Marina's accent was thick, her patience thin. You walk like you're apologizing. Own the space. Margaret's feet ached in the 4-inch heels. She'd fallen twice that first week, her knees bruised, her pride battered. But each time she hit the floor, she got back up. Your posture says you're sorry for taking up room. Marina circled her like a hawk. The runway doesn't care about your humility. It demands presence. Something clicked in Margaret's mind. She straightened her spine, lifted her chin, and walked the length of the practice runway with newfound purpose. The other models in training, all decades younger, stopped to watch. There. Marina nodded. That's the woman who survived. Show her. The training intensified. Nutritionists, dermatologists, voice coaches. Rebecca transformed Margaret's wardrobe, teaching her that fashion wasn't about hiding but celebrating. The silver hair stayed, now cut in a striking angular bob that framed her face like art. Emily visited the studio one afternoon, her eyes wide with disbelief. Mom, you look incredible. I feel incredible. Margaret realized it was true. For the first time in decades, she felt alive. 3 days before the show, Dominique gathered everyone in the studio. Fashion Week had been buzzing with rumors about Maison Lumiere's mysterious new face. Social media speculation was rampant. They're going to eat you alive out there. Dominique's honesty was characteristic. Critics will say you're a gimmick, that I'm exploiting age diversity for press. Some will call you brave. Others will call you delusional. Can you handle that? Margaret thought of Lucas Bennett's cruel laugh, of Veronica Blackwell's dismissive sneer 28 years ago, of every moment she'd been told she wasn't enough. Let them talk. I've spent 3 decades being invisible. I'll take criticism over invisibility any day. The morning of Fashion Week arrived with unexpected chaos. The headlining model, a 22-year-old named Sasha who was supposed to close the show, had been poached by a rival house offering triple the pay. Dominique stood in the dressing room, her usual composure cracking. We have no closer. The finale piece is our most important moment. Margaret watched from her mirror, her heart pounding. The finale dress was a masterpiece, a flowing silver gown that looked like liquid moonlight. It was meant for someone young, someone relevant. I'll do it. Margaret's voice cut through the panic. Everyone turned to stare. You've been training me for 6 weeks to walk that runway. Let me close your show. Dominique's eyes searched Margaret's face, looking for doubt. She found only determination. Rebecca, get her in the finale dress. Dominique's smile was fierce. Margaret Hayes, you're about to make history. The backstage area pulsed with controlled chaos. Hairsprays hissed, makeup brushes flew, and the thunder of music from the runway vibrated through the walls. Margaret sat in front of her mirror, watching Rebecca make final adjustments to the silver gown. The dress fit like it had been dreamed specifically for her. It cascaded down her body in waves of metallic silk, the neckline sharp and architectural, the back daringly open. Her silver hair caught the light, no longer something to hide but a crown she'd earned through 5 decades of living. You're shaking. Rebecca placed a steady hand on Margaret's shoulder. Terrified doesn't begin to cover it. Good. Fear means it matters. Rebecca met her eyes in the mirror. My mother is 61. She stopped buying beautiful clothes 10 years ago because she said no one made them for women like her anymore. Tonight, you're walking for her. For all of them. The first models began their walks. Margaret could hear the music shift, the applause rise and fall. Each girl returned backstage flushed with adrenaline, reporting that the crowd was massive, that every major publication was in attendance. Dominique appeared at Margaret's side, elegant in black as always. The press is vicious out there. Anna Wintour is front row. So are the critics who've spent years gatekeeping who gets to be beautiful. She paused. Are you ready to tell them they're wrong? Margaret stood, the gown settling perfectly around her. She thought of her mother, who'd never gotten to chase her own dreams. Of Emily, who needed to see that reinvention was possible at any age. Of every woman who'd been told her expiration date had passed. I was born ready. I just forgot for a while. The model before her returned, and suddenly it was time. The music shifted to something powerful and cinematic. Margaret stepped into position behind the curtain, her heart a war drum in her chest. This is your runway now. Show them what 53 looks like when it stops apologizing. The curtain opened. The lights hit her like a baptism. The runway stretched before her, impossibly long, lined on both sides by hundreds of faces. Cameras flashed like stars exploding. For one crystalline moment, Margaret felt every doubt try to pull her under. Then she took her first step. The room shifted. Margaret didn't walk. She commanded. Each step was deliberate, powerful, unapologetic. The silver gown moved with her like liquid confidence. She kept her eyes forward, her chin high, channeling every rejection into fuel. Halfway down the runway, she caught sight of Emily in the second row, tears streaming down her face, hands clasped like prayer. Margaret reached the end of the runway, paused, turned with devastating precision, and walked back. The silence broke. Applause erupted. Not polite fashion clapping, but something thunderous and genuine. People stood. Anna Wintour was nodding, actually smiling. Backstage, Dominique grabbed her in a fierce embrace. You just changed everything. Margaret realized she was crying, but these were different tears. Not from pain or regret, but from finally becoming who she was always meant to be. 18 months later, Margaret stood in her new apartment overlooking Central Park, a space she'd only dreamed of affording. The walls were covered with magazine covers bearing her face. Vogue, Harper's Bazaar, Elle. The woman staring back at her from those glossy pages was unrecognizable from the one who'd restocked cosmetics under fluorescent lights. Her phone rang. It was Dominique. Turn on Channel 4. You need to see this. Margaret grabbed the remote. A news segment was playing, featuring young models walking out of agencies in protest. The caption read, Industry uprising, models demand age diversity after Hayes effect. The Hayes effect, that's what they were calling it now. Her runway walk had sparked a revolution. Fashion houses were scrambling to book older models. Agencies that had rejected women over 30 were suddenly scouting nursing homes and grocery stores, desperate to find the next Margaret Hayes. But there was only one. She'd walked for Chanel, Dior, and Versace. At 54, she was booked solid through next year. The Walgreens vest hung in her closet now, a reminder of where she'd come from, though she'd never need to wear it again. Emily had quit her corporate job to become Margaret's manager. They worked together every day. The relationship transformed from mother-daughter obligation to genuine partnership built on mutual respect. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Margaret opened it to find a young woman, barely 20, holding a portfolio. "I'm sorry to bother you, Miss Hayes. My name is Jordan. I was told I'm too short to model. 5'7". They said I missed the standard by 2 inches. The girl's voice cracked. "But then I saw you and I thought maybe standards are just opinions from people who lack imagination." Margaret smiled, seeing herself in this girl's desperate hope. "Come in. Let me tell you about a woman named Dominique Chun who taught me that the runway belongs to anyone brave enough to walk it." As Jordan stepped inside, Margaret caught her reflection in the hallway mirror. Silver hair perfectly styled, confidence radiating from every line of her face. She looked like exactly what she was. A woman who'd been told no her entire life and had finally, magnificently, said no back. Her phone buzzed with a text from Dominique. "Dinner tonight? I have an idea for the next collection. It involves women over 60. Interested in being my muse again?" Margaret typed back immediately, "Always." She looked out at the New York skyline, the city that had once chewed up her dreams and spit them out. Now it was hers. Every runway, every camera flash, every young girl who saw her and realized that beauty didn't have an expiration date. Thank you for watching Margaret's story until the very end. If her journey moved you, hit that like button and subscribe to see more stories about people who refuse to let the world define their limits. Drop a comment telling us what dream you're ready to chase, no matter your age. Remember, it's never too late to become who you were always meant to be. See you in the next one.